Okay, in today's episode here on our YouTube channel here at Welch Family Homestead. By the way, welcome to Welch Family Homestead. This is Jeff. And but the big question is, how late can you plant your cucumbers and squash and still get a good yield? Well, it depends on your environment, depends on your climate. And here we're in a 7A zone. That means, we're going to see some of our first frosts in October. And so that cucumbers, once they've germinated, once they've been placed in the ground, it takes usually about 2 weeks for them to germinate. Sometimes they'll germinate quicker. Here we've had a lot quicker germination than a 2-week period. And within literally 5 days, I've had the sprouts coming up out of the dirt after planting them. If the humidity's right, the temperature's right, plenty of moisture coming down with rains, and we've had some major rains. So 5 days into it, I seen good germination, and so we're ahead of the game. So forgetting all that, you need about 12 weeks until harvest time. I'm not looking for the large cucumbers. Some people look for large cucumbers or large squash. I look for the tender young squash and the tender young cucumbers. That way we get good cucumbers that are tasty, they're good and crispy for pickling, and at the same time, I just like the texture of them better when they're younger. And the more that you pick them when they're younger, the more that they're going to have other blooms and other cucumbers come in right behind them. So let's take a look at these. These right here, and I'm holding my phone, the camera to take these right here are doing extremely well. These are cucumbers, and you can see what we put them in. It's time to do the first weeding. Not a lot of weeds right now, but obviously you want to pull the weeds and keep the weeds from gaining strength in the dirt. You also notice that we've made mounds wherever the cucumbers are planted. Now, these are really good, healthy cucumbers. All organic. There's no chemicals, no fertilizers being placed within the soil. It's all organic. We also have plenty of squash here growing, and the squash is coming up nicely. The squash is coming up nicely, as you can see. And but it's time to also, this soil looks crusty because we had some really hard rains that beat it down. But if you notice, this is just on the surface. If you notice how soft this soil is, it is literally right on the surface. So it's not going to matter. Everything's good here. Very soft dirt. I can literally put my hand all the way down into this soil, elbow deep. It's very soft. And we planted some greens up here, which is good for later on in the season. But when is the latest time to plant? I'm going to give you my timing. The latest you want to plant cucumbers and squash is mid-June to no later than mid-July. And right now we're at the 1st of July. These were all planted about mid-June. The cucumbers were, and the squash was planted end of June. Perfect timing. All good there. And they're doing really well. Again, we put them in mounds. This is organic soil, never been any chemicals, no chemical fertilizers whatsoever in this dirt. This has always been organic. We've replowed this is where the onions was. And this is the corn. Corn is doing really well. Now, we planted the corn fairly close together, as you can see. And the corn, as it's growing close together, it's going to shadow out a lot of the other growth, which would be the weeds. I mean, we're going to have some weeds, but again, we're growing organic. We're not spraying for any herbicides. We're going to make sure this stays organic. But look how healthy this corn looks. This is, in my opinion, some of the most beautiful corn on its way up, and it's going to harvest just right this fall. We're gonna have some really good corn. We got about 1,100 feet of corn in this section, which is good enough for our family. Now, I'm gonna take you down to the green beans so you can see what's happening with the green beans. I am going to have to restake them because we've had a lot of rain over the last couple of days, actually about a week. We had a dry spell, and if you'll notice the growth here, and we've strung them, but I need to put some more posts to hold these up because the strings are pulling down from the weight of the plants. So we've got to get these plants supported with more posts. These were good and tight, but the weight of the beans, we've had probably at least 2 foot of growth. Look at all this growth here. And these strings were put up about a week ago. We've had that much growth. Hey, Chevy. Say hello to the camera. We've had that much growth to where it has wrapped around these strings in the last week, and which is a lot. So we're going to have some really good green beans to can this year. Very excited about that. And we had a major gully washer here over the last couple of days that we've made a decision we're not going to have the garden here in the same spot next year. This was an experiment where it was. We're going to move the garden to the lower section, another lower section of the property where we don't have an incline in the land. Right here we have an incline. So saying all that, the green beans are doing well. Corn is doing well. Squash is doing well. Cucumbers is doing well. Onions did well. We have greens and all types of greens and salads that are radishes, beets, all that is going to come around later because you can plant later. So the point I'm making in the video here today is that some people get stressed out about what to plant, when to plant it. And it's important to know. I grew up on a farm, so we don't get stressed out about it. We do what we can. And sometimes you have to work around the weather. Sometimes you have to work around other things as well. And I don't do this full time. I do this part time. I do my business full time. And so business comes first to a certain point. And you have to do what you got to do. I'm a mess right now. It's hot. It's very humid today. Got good crowder peas going right now. They're growing really well. Need to pull the weeds and some of that and get it good and ready for staking them out. And they'll do like the green beans. Crowder peas are delicious when they're prepared right, harvested right. So put that in mind when you're planting. What can you plant right now? You can plant a lot of your greens. Some of your greens actually do better if you harvest them after frost. So if you're planting turnip greens, collard greens, you can plant some root vegetables like your radishes and your beets, and your turnips, any of those, any of your tubers that work within that category. You can even plant onions again at this time of year. It's fine. It's totally fine. You can get a second harvest out of a lot of. I'm gonna step over here in the shade. It is hot here today, and I'm melting, and the camera is gonna overheat if I stay over there in that sunshine. Wow. So planting in early spring is fine, but you know, there's just as much risk planting too early as there are risk planting too late. And you'll have a less of a fallout or mistakes planting later than you would planting too early. You plant too early and an early frost, get the tender plants. That's when you you're going to be upset because all that time's wasted. Now, what we did here, one of the reasons we planted a lot of things late in the garden is because this was pasture. And again, organically, we didn't want to spray anything on it, any chemicals. So what I did is I plowed it and plowed it and plowed it. This dirt has been plowed probably 40 times. And the reason for that was it kept taking the soil and composting any of the growth, root systems, or any of the plant matter that was growing through it. I'd let it grow just a little bit, not enough to turn into seed, just enough to get the weeds about this high up, and then we plowed again. And we keep doing that until eventually, well, you diminish. Right here, you can see a lot of the area here where we planted the greens, and we started plowing this in February, and this is July, and it's pretty much weed free. It's not totally sterile, obviously. If I let it go, it'd turn into weeds, but if we kept that going year after year, we would actually diminish the weeds greatly, and then we bring in some more compost on top of it. It will keep diminishing it as long as that compost is sterile. So there's ways to build the soil. Here we don't really need to build it because the soil is very rich and has a lot of nutrition in it right now as it goes. I could plant in this soil for the next 3, 4, 5 years, and it produced very well before having to actually add any kind of compost or fertilization, and do very well with it. But then after that, we'd start depleting the mineral content, nutritional content of the soil, and then it would actually start needing some nutrition added to it. So instead of adding that high levels of nitrogen and high levels of potassium and phosphorus and at a very high rate, I'd much rather do it a little bit at a time each year, and we'll add the compost piles into it each year and do that. So that will help build that soil year after year and make it even better and better, instead of letting it get stressed out and then trying to revive it. So it's much better to do it that way. But this first year, we were taking the overgrowth off and replacing it with just the garden. And again, we're not going to be doing it here this next year. We're going to move it to another location because we don't want the washing. You can see the grooves that were cut into it right in here. And we don't want any erosion like that. I can retrieve the erosion here on the farm because it's not going to get off the farm. It just goes down into the bottom and stops, and some of it may get into the stream and get into my lake, and we'll drain the lake maybe once every year or two and clean out all the silt and move it back into the garden areas, and we haven't lost it. It never goes off our property into anyone else's property. But if you have property where your erosion can move on to other people's property, that's not a good thing at all. And or if it's going into a lake system or a creek system that is providing the environment for fish, it can kill out their ability to spawn, because a fish cannot spawn if the silt covers up their sandy bottoms. So you have to take that in consideration as well. So what we're going to do here, we're going to replace the garden. It's all going to go back to grass, and we're going to make this our berry orchard. So that way it'll be more a perennial that will keep growing year after year. We just mow in between it, and it stays erosion free, because we're going to have growth there that's going to be 100% of the time not dug up, but just maintained grass and bushes of berries. There'll be some vines. We'll have some grapes here. We'll have some canes. Canes meaning we'll have some raspberries, and we'll also have some blueberries, gooseberries, all those. We're not going to have our strawberries up here. We'll have our strawberries in the other area because we'll need to actually prepare differently for the strawberries. May have some strawberries up here if we see fit for it, but this is going to be more of the area where we'll have a lot of the berry orchard and grapes, berries and grapes, and we'll be able to maintain in between it by cutting in between it and trellising, and we'll also put more beehives in between the bushes as well, because this is a perfect environment down this valley here for beehives, because it's a perfect gap between a north slope and a south slope with the east slope blocking it off. So it won't get too hot. The bees will love it, and it won't get too cold. You want to keep the temperature up on the beehives as much as possible in the summertime, which If you do, keep it hot enough in an area where it gets plenty of sun, which this area does. That keeps the small hive beetles down, the mites down, and the wax moths down if you keep them in heavier sunlight. But you also want to keep it cooler so that they don't overheat. So it's a balance there. This area right here in this whole valley here would be perfect for that. And that's what we're going to do here as we plant it out. So anyway, cucumbers are fine to plant, but plant them now. Don't wait much longer. If you plant them now, you'll be starting to harvest your cucumbers probably mid-September, late September, all the way through mid-October. You're not going to get any heavy enough frost to hurt your cucumbers probably until the end of October in the 7A zone here, up until probably mid-November. You're going to get possibly some frost, but it's not going to be bad enough to hurt your cucumbers or your squash. You may get some edge bite on your leaves, but it's not going to be enough to keep them from continuing to grow and to create blooms and to produce fruit until you get through harvesting them. So, but right now, I would say that you're in that last couple of weeks of opportunity to plant your cucumbers and your squash. I would say you could go ahead and plant your greens. I would plant greens all the way up, like turnip greens and collard greens. I would plant them even as late as September. Be fine, because to me, I think the greens taste better after they've gone through a frost. I've harvested collards and turnip greens as late as December, which is fine. They're hardy in the wintertime. Also pumpkins. Pumpkins are fine to plant right now as well. You can plant pumpkins right now and they'll do just great. You can also plant you some lettuce and some the fine leaf greens like spinach. Things like that is fine. I wouldn't plant head lettuce. I would only plant leaf lettuce and leafy greens. I wouldn't plant things that you expect to turn into a head, like cabbage or iceberg lettuce. I wouldn't go in that direction. They should have been planted earlier. But I'd say it would be totally fine to plant other types of lettuce that grow as a leaf that you cut the leaves, not the heads. And we actually planted some lettuce and some spinach here just the other day. And looking forward to that coming out of the ground, and we should be harvesting that in a few weeks. So anyway, I hope this helps you with some of your timing, and realize that it's not too late to plant. Just know what you can plant this late, and realize that you can do certain things within your dirt and make your dirt happy and make your family happy and provide for your family by planting a garden. And secondly, the things that you don't have time to plant, remember there's farmers markets, and there's people that grow around you that take their vegetables to the farmers markets on the Saturdays or what have you in your local areas. Support those local farmers and buy from your local farmers and provide for your family through a co-op of people who grow things near you. And you may even be interested in growing more of what you need of a certain vegetable that you become good at. And maybe you become that one that says, I'm going to be the one who is the cucumber provider, or the cabbage provider, or the tomato provider at the farmer's market. You're going to get good at something in the garden, and something's going to catch your attention where you really like what you do. And it may be blueberries. It may be peaches. It may be plums. It may be cherries. Whatever you become good at, you may be that person at the farmer's market that sits there and enjoys the company of others, and getting to know people that are going to come back as your repeat customers, that's going to smile and cause you to smile. God bless you. Have a beautiful day. And thank you for visiting me here at Welch Family Homestead on this hot and humid day. And I hope you gain some information here, and hope you plant something in the dirt this year. God bless.